Hey everyone, it's Nancy Ann, and today I thought I would show you how I feed my fairly stiff starter. Welcome to my channel and welcome back if you're returning. I really appreciate you taking a little bit of your precious time to spend with me. Today I am going to be feeding my pretty stiff starter. Now I keep this at about 75% hydration, and it can be a little bit tricky to feed these stiffer starters because it's hard to break them up. So I thought maybe I would share with you how I do this. Probably a little more detailed than a lot of people go into because, well, I'm nothing if not verbose, but I thought this might be handy for some people out there who struggle with this also. So I have my scale here. Links to everything I use, mostly just the scale, are down in my description box, but I'm gonna turn it on. Now I know that this container that this is kept in, which by the way is just an old potato salad container, is 43 grams. I weighed it long ago. I like this because it's straight up and down on the sides, and that's what you want for feeding your starter, is pretty darn straight, because then you get a good gauge of how much it's risen before I go to put it back in the refrigerator or use it. So I've turned it on. I have it set at grams. Setting it down there. So 131 is where I am at right now. I need this to be 63 grams because, again, this weighs 43 grams and I want 20 grams of starter left over. So I'm going to put the leftovers in my discard jar. Now this is really full and I need to make some pancakes or some crackers or some pie crust or some biscuits or something. But I'm going to empty this down until I get to 63 grams. I have got a nice stiff spatula that I'm using for this. Let me see where I am. 62, very close. I'm going to go ahead and throw a little bit in just so I can say I was really at 63 grams. Now I want to show you in my discard jar, I'm putting this in there, but I'm going to shove this down. I'll do it right here. Because the stuff around it is older and it kind of feeds on that, works on it a little bit. Also, a trick about your discard, if you for some reason kill or run out of your starter, you can just take some of your discard and start up a new one fairly quickly. So just set that off to the side. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to reset this to 0. Now I do my starter again at 75% hydration because that's what I do my bread on most of the time, or very close to it. So I'm going to put in 75 grams of baby bath warm water, and that just means if you were to run it over your wrist, you wouldn't feel it. It would feel wet, but you wouldn't really feel a temperature. Just kind of warm, and any temperature from that cooler will work. It's just that helps it to rise a little bit faster. And I'm going to wait until I get up to 75 grams. All right. And now to mix this, it's quite stiff. So I'm going to take that nice sturdy rubber scraper, spatula, whatever you want to call it, and I'm going to break it up with this. Now, I will tell you there's a little bit of starter on that. It's okay. We don't need to worry about absolute exact. I just want about 1 part starter to 5 parts of flour. I found that tends to be a really good mix for me. And also some of the starter that is weighed in that 20 grams is also dried up around the edges of the container, so that doesn't get down in there. So probably what was left on the spatula here makes up for that. And now I'm going to take this little wire whisk. This is my trick. And I'm just going to whisk this until most of those clumps are gone so that we get an even distribution of the starter to the flour once that flour gets mixed in. This takes a little while, but it's worth it. I'm going to take my spatula back in here. I'm going to do some scraping on the sides. I'm going to do some smushing. Now that it's softened up, kind of smash it into the sides a little bit. If this was 100% hydration, I wouldn't need to do this. It's much easier to mix. But because my dough is always very close to 75% hydration, for lack of a more technical term, because I'm not the most scientific person alive, The starter's already used to that hydration. I just know I get better results in my crumb when I feed my starter at the same hydration that I make my bread. And if you think about it, sourdough bread is really just one gigantic starter that's salted. So it makes sense to go ahead and feed this at the same ratio that you do the actual bread, because they're the same thing, really. They're just, one's just salted and the other one's not. So you see that's kind of frothy and foamy. There's still little pieces, but it's going to be okay. And now I'm going to set it to 0, and I'm going to add in 100 grams of whole wheat flour. Mine is a whole wheat starter. If you want to use rye, you want to use bread flour, you want to use something else, that's okay. I just use whole wheat because that's what I use the most often. And now I'm going to mix that together with my nice strong rubber scraper again. Making sure I'm getting it evenly moist. I'm going to scrape down the sides, make sure no dry patches remain. And now that I have no water sitting in the bottom anymore, and it's fairly well mixed, not perfect, but fairly well, I'm going to get in there with my hands. I'm just going to set that aside. I don't need it anymore. And I'm going to smash it into the corners and pick up all of that dry flour and work it in. I'm using that rubber scraper to try and dig out any extra from the corners there, any of that dry flour. And I'm keeping the water there so that if I need to wet my hands to keep it from sticking to my hands, I can. Yes, it does raise the hydration just a little bit, but it's not that big a deal. And also, as my starter sits in the refrigerator, even though I do cover it, it still does dry out just a little bit. So just a little bit of extra hydration certainly isn't going to hurt anything, and it probably winds up being 1% or less. Now that it's all thoroughly incorporated, I'm going to evenly as I can, smash it along the bottom of my container here. That's close enough. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close. And now I'm going to take a rubber band and I'm going to mark it at the top level. So the top level of the band is going with the top level of my starter. And now I'm going to set it aside until it doubles. That usually takes 4 to 6 hours. I don't pay attention to the clock as much as I pay attention to the fact that it doubles. So I'll see you back when it has doubled. By the way, when I set it aside, I do put the lid slightly off kilter on there so that a little bit of air can get down into there. I've found that also helps my starter, but I don't want the lid completely off because then it dries out too much and makes a crust on the top. So just a little tiny tilt like that. It is about 6 hours later, and as you can see, my starter has roughly doubled. I consider, by the way, doubling when the height of the dome that rises up and not the stuff that's clinging to the side has doubled from the original height. If I was to use this starter within the next 3 days, I would just take it straight out of the fridge like this and put it straight into my dough. Longer than that, I would feed it again and let it double before using it. I hope that this was helpful for you. Please let me know what you think in the comments section down below. I love interacting with you. If you found this video useful or enjoyable or helpful in any way, I would appreciate it if you could give it a thumbs up, please. And if you enjoy different content about sourdough, mostly scoring, please consider subscribing. Thanks a bunch. Bye-bye and be blessed. And today we're going to be doing, nope, I didn't like that. Today I thought I would make you a no, don't like that either. Hey everyone, I'm just going to start over. This is ridiculous.